So, Brad, thanks for being on the Leadership Lounge. So, specifically, the point of this podcast, video cast, or whatever is to bring on people, learn about their stories and how they got into the specialty that they had, and then some things that people can do and leaders and entrepreneurs, business owners can do in like what you know specifically, like some kind of tips and tricks that can really help people build a solid business. And maybe some things that, there's so much information out there, things that business owners and leaders can hone in on that would be the best use of their time inside of your specialty. So thank you for being on. Also for context, Brad is the chief operating officer of the main business that I work for. And the reason why he was really hired for this was the expertise we're going to talk about. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's just start from the beginning. The thing I love the most about this aspect and what we're doing is the origin stories. So can you just talk about, maybe high school, you're going to college, what you went to college for and why you went to college for that, and then talk a little about your job journey, personal journey, and then kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so went to high school about an hour and a half away from here, Wawasee High School, who we service. And I played sports. That was a big part of my life. And actually, I was a captain of my soccer team, which was cool. And people said, so I went into management in my career, but it really started early on with some of that and what that looked like. And I think I had obviously no experience when I was a captain of a soccer team, but learned what it looked like to care about people. And I think that's what a lot of reasons that people voted for me to be captain. And so I went there for high school, was debating on what I wanted to do with my life, and went to Miami University in Ohio. It's not in the luxury Florida place.
Well, whenever I think of Miami University, I don't know if you ever watched The Office, but it's like when Kelly's like, I'm going to Miami, and she's like, she throws all of her coats away, and it's Miami, Ohio. So that's like literally my only thought.
Sometimes a letdown, and actually they had some international students that thought, I think they were going to Florida, and they arrived. And but it was a great school, great for business. I knew I wanted to do business, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I respected my dad a lot growing up. He owned his own business and still does, and just knew that I wanted to improve things, and obviously that's a big part of who I am, and I like making money, so I didn't know what I was going to do with that, though, too.
Yeah. So what was? Did you say what your major was that you studied?
Marketing.
So you wanted to go into business in some capacity. Why marketing as your focus? Why not accounting? Why not?
So I again, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I thought, down the HR or management, like anyone can do that, right? So that's a skill set that is more learned. And marketing, I thought was good. I really thought I'd be good in sales. I'm good with people and enjoyed that. So having a marketing degree would obviously help you in that. And just really wasn't sure, but I kind of found myself in that, and liked it, stayed in it. After my first year, you're officially in the business program, and completed all 4 years. Kind of my junior year, I got a job at Target as an intern, and it was in a management thing. So wasn't even in marketing, but colleges push getting internships and getting some experience. So I took an internship that looked good, and I was going to learn a lot. And
now, was that like a partnership with Miami and Target? Was that like a job fair, or how was that opportunity presented?
Yeah, so it was weird because I went to school about 4 hours away from where I grew up, and I went to the career fair, and Target was all over there. And but I was clear if I interned, I wanted to intern where I lived, and so I could go home during the summer. And I actually applied to my local internship back home, and so I kind of learned about it in the career fair, but got the job through just naturally applying.
Yeah, I remember going to the career fairs when I was at Ball State, and I remember like some of my friends were like, "Oh, I'm going to go work for Enterprise Rental Car," and it was like $35,000 a year. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you could make $35,000 a year out of college." I remember my mind being blown, and then being like, "Oh, like that is like there's not much quick upward mobility. This is like you get in there, you grind, and then slowly." So like what was your decision with Target? Was it because it was a big corporation or?
So it was a 10-week internship program and had a great experience. I mean, it's retail, so you get some of that. But being young and in college, and so my first job offer was $46,000, and that was a lot in college. I was like pumped. I was like,
that was like I can afford a new car.
Yeah. So I knew my entire senior year that I had a job, which was great, and I also dabbled of like, well, if I find something else that's better, I could always do that. I knew for a year that I had Target though. And I did learn a lot in the internship. Like it taught me a lot, and I could see their training program was solid and just a great company to work for. So I don't really know how hard I looked for other jobs, knowing that I had one.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when you're like, you got like the kind of like where your dream was at. Yeah. It's like, I don't have to go look much further.
So then graduated college, started right away in a management career, and worked my butt off. Like it was, I was willing to work 70, 80-hour weeks, and obviously nights, weekends. It didn't bother me, but I was young. And
you got to do that. That's right out of college.
And I learned a ton. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. So some motto I use is you either need to be learning or earning. And if you're doing neither, it's probably not a good job. Because and I, being young, I felt like I was doing a little bit of both, which is great. But that really allowed me to learn a lot about management, and Target put me in different opportunities to grow as well. So
this is a question. You obviously worked for Target for a while, and for me, a simpleton, I get a little bit of target market. Can you like give some examples of the things that Target specifically did different than someone like Meijer or Walmart to like attract people? Because they're not cheaper, but like what did they do differently that Walmart and Meijer
Yeah, so Target, and this is more of the corporate side of it, but just knowing our customer base, a lot of it is partnering with certain brands. So back in, I think it was like the 70s and 80s, they partnered with big brands and made their own line of those things. So for example, Levi's, there's Denizen. So there's a Levi jean, but it's Target branded. Or there's a lot of partnerships with huge companies too, where it's like for a short time you can get this at Target, and it's a Target line. And
so kind of like the Chip and Joanna Gaines, Magnolia stuff is like, they're like, hey, this is like, okay, that makes sense.
And so that's a long-term thing. So, but what that does is it attracts that market in, because there's new and ever-changing things, and Target is always remaking themselves and doing tons of remodels at their old stores and just keeping it current. Whereas, I would say the Walmarts of the world, what you're getting the lowest price, and Target markets themselves as low price as well, and they try to compete in that space, but that's not their only goal.
Yeah, Target has done an unbelievable job marketing themselves. Like, we have just about everything Walmart and Meijer did, and it was like a week or two ago, my wife had given me a list of things we needed, just random things, and it was like a rotisserie chicken and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, you know what? I do enjoy just kind of meandering Target. I think that's what they've done really well. Like, it's fun to meander. But I literally went there and I couldn't get anything on the list, so I had to leave and go to Walmart. But I think that's like what Target's done, in like that demographic of, it's like enjoyable to shop there. It's not as stressful, and they've done a good job with that. And like specifically on the demographic side, I remember this from 12 years ago, and I don't know if this is still the same today, but my accounting professor in college had this question for the class: what business always puts themselves within a mile of a Target? And we're all like trying to think, what? And he's like, remember that it would be a company that is trying to service a similar demographic. And it was Panera Bread. So Panera Bread didn't have to do any demographic research. They just knew that their product set would, their customers and Target customers are the same. I think that's kind of cool how much Target is market oriented rather than just trying to get every single possible person in. They're trying to get a specific kind of person in.
Yeah. And Target puts a lot of research into where to put those stores, and even different format stores. So there's city Targets that they just have to have they have less space to work with, or multi-stories, or they're a great company and put a lot of time and energy into what they do and why they do it well. And I saw that when I was looking for jobs and felt it as an intern and felt confident. And even I'm a very risk adverse person. So by joining Target, I knew that they were going to be around for a while. Even seeing the retail industry and how it has kind of gone down in certain markets, but the big dogs have really thrived and grown off of that too. And you never know, but I was like pretty sure Target's going to be around. So
well, yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Target basically like almost like shifted a little bit where it became an online store, obviously, but then you can pick up in store. But do they ship out of each individual store too?
Yeah. So I think it's been, I don't know, 5 or 6 years since I've been at Target, and I was at Target for 6 years, and was really part of that journey on getting how does the company shift from just being brick and mortar to really competing with the Amazons of the world. And what's funny, I'm going to butcher this, but there was another company that managed Target's online website, and I want to say it's Amazon. I might be wrong, but it was a company like that where they basically gave them the keys to the kingdom and said, hey, operate this for us. So they had all this data coming in about Target, and then they realized, oh, this is going to be like a huge thing. We need to take this in-house. So I'd say, like all the other brick and mortar stores, they were behind the 8 ball in going online. But that's something that I felt was unique, 6-7 years ago, or really 5 years ago, of how do they become efficient with their brick and mortar stores. So if you can ship out of a store, you save shipping and your turnaround time because you're already local. And Amazon's been blowing up everywhere, so they're opening warehouses. But Target already had that. So it became this just flow of inventory that you had to manage, and that's managed by corporate. But that's where your counts are super important, and managing that and managing the team that updates that, and numbers are really important in that game.
So you said 6 years. It's been 6 years since you worked at Target. You obviously, can you talk a little bit about your decision to move on to your next opportunity after that?
Yeah. So my journey at Target, I started as a sales floor, like an assistant manager, basically. Did that for 2 years. Did 2 years as an HR manager, and then I got promoted to a store manager, and I ran my own store for 2 years. And all steps of that, I learned and I soaked things up, and but they were hard, and I had just started a family. I think my daughter was 1.5 years maybe when I left, and I was still working 60, 70-hour weeks, and you kind of have to be ready to go in at a moment's notice for when things happen, and got paid great money, but just knew this wasn't a long-term thing I could do with my family, and fell in love with the area that I moved into, and I was like, I'm not leaving Valpo. I love it here, and started looking at a couple other places, and Family Express is a local company in Valparaiso, and got introduced. Actually, a guy that I used to work with at Target went to Family Express. He worked at the Valpo office at the Valpo Target, and talked to him a little bit about it, and said good things, and I actually applied, and this is where it's important that you start in a career that's kind of going to set you up for what you want to do. I applied for the category manager role at Family Express, thinking maybe I wanted to use my marketing degree. I've got that degree. It should make it so that I can use my skill set in that. But I didn't have any actual experience doing it. So I applied to that. Actually, one of the owner's sons, when he interviewed me, he asked me, he said, you're clearly in management, and I admitted that. And he hit a nail on the head with me too. He said, you've kind of just been part of retail abuse, which was true, just working too many hours. And he expressed, that it's different at Family Express, and like work-life balance does matter. And that hit home for me too, because it wasn't that I didn't like that environment. I just didn't like that I couldn't live a life and have a family. And so interviewed with him and felt good about it, and ultimately took a district manager role at Family Express, and got some of my life back. And it was still retail in some capacity, but it was a different ballgame and a different mindset too when I took that role.
So you move, you're kind of can you talk a little bit about what a district manager does for like a convenience-like store?
Yeah. So, Family Express is a chain of convenience stores. Like they have 74, I think they had convenience stores across Indiana when I left. And you're multi-site though. So that's a different ballgame. So a district manager, you've got 10, 11 different stores that you're in charge of. And so they have an HR team of 4 or 5 people. And then the district manager is in charge of your 10 stores. And you kind of play a little bit of both in that role from what I was used to. So at a store at Target, I had my own HR person, and it was everything HR. I had my own sales floor assistant manager, logistics, assets protection. As a district manager, you kind of wear all hats. Yeah. So that was where it was really good for me to have had multiple roles at my career at Target, because I could tap into that and tap into my knowledge. And even though I didn't have the official titles at Target, I was also, like, I ran the logistics team for one winter when we were down a person, and I dabbled in assets protection, and those types of things really helped me in multi-site too, because you're not there every day. So you have to have a good pulse and use the tools at your fingertips of managing 11 different stores when you might only get there once or twice a week. You have to have different time management skills and ultimately still be in charge of hiring and firing and that.
That's a lot of I didn't realize it was 10 to 12 locations per district manager. So, like, what would you say an average location, like, on-site, you'd be there, like, a month?
So we made sure as a company, like, you're there at every store once a week at a minimum. So you make your presence, and it's unannounced, right? So your team doesn't know necessarily when you'll be there, which is good, so that that's not like they're hiding stuff and, the boss is coming in, which is a good culture to have. And you spend more times at your stores that are struggling and less time at stores that are doing well that you know you can count on. And there's cameras, so you can watch that. And Family Express does a really good job at managing from afar. So there's tools. There's something called Zenput, which we use there, where you would take pictures of the store and how it looked. So without even being in the store, I could see how the store looks, and it's just using different tools when you're multi-site that I didn't have to use when I was at a single site location. Yeah.
So kind of like for you, obviously, moving your way up. Obviously, you're district manager for how many years?
It's about, I think, a year and a half.
And then you obviously move on to another opportunity with them. Can you talk about why you decided to go in that direction, and then what that was like?
Yeah, so I always like doing new things, and I think that excites me and energizes me. And I also have a motto of, like, don't be afraid to suck at something. So taking on a new role and a new responsibility, you're obviously not going to know what you're doing yet, and there's a learning curve. So I felt like my skills as a store manager at Target transferred very well to being a district manager at Family Express, and I utilized a lot really quickly, and I was confident in my decisions. Then there became an opportunity about a year and a half in. I was doing well, growing with Family Express. It became available to become a risk manager, which I was like, I don't know a thing about that. It was on the HR team, so I had some comfort level there. I'd learned a bunch of HR in that role, and then even outside at Target, and I'll try it. And it was basically general liability, workers' comp, anything that people could get hurt in. I would be in charge of any incident, and there's a lot that happens at convenience stores, because people are in and out very quickly versus a Target. They're in there all the time, and so I was like, I'll try it. I can't promise that I'll be great at it, but let's see how it goes. And so I took that role on, and it started off like strictly risk management. That's all I did. And then as I was on the team, I kind of just weaved my way through and took on an HR liaison type role, where now there were stores that used me as the HR resource for advice and how do you write counselings and corrective action. So I became an HR liaison on top of that too for, I think it was either 2 or 3 districts, and then office, bakery, and distribution center. So that's it was just another stretch thing that again, I could tap into my experience, but I was learning a lot at Family Express as I continued down that path.
So how many employees did Family Express have at that time?
Oh, just shy of 1,000 probably.
Okay. So medium-sized business.
Yeah. And it I started at Target, which is
one
huge.
Of the biggest corporations.
And then,
in the US.
I joined Family Express and it felt very small. Yeah. And then over time, I was like, oh, this is bigger than I think. And so it definitely felt, but it was fun because I could make a difference on a higher level at Family Express, right? So at Target, because they have all their ducks in a row, you are a strong executor, and that's what they want you to do. So they've done all the research. They know where to put your store, what to target, what to market, and you're like, okay, I got to get the stuff off the shelves or off the truck on the shelves, make sure it's marked and tagged correctly. And that's
they don't need you to solve problems. The problems have been solved and figured out.
And there's some ownership of like, okay, what end cap goes where, but the stuff isn't changing.
Yeah.
It's already been decided. But then you go to a smaller company, right? And now it's okay, we're going to need you to help rewrite the handbook. We're going to need you to help rewrite some of these policies. How do we make sure that we're compliant? And they had their own legal team, which was great, and was a good support system to me. And that was very eye-opening working with, and by no means was I on the legal team, but I worked closely with that team. And I learned a lot from that. And again, just setting myself up throughout my career of giving me opportunities to learn in something that I wasn't good at allowed me to just broaden my horizons and make me more effective of a leader that I am today.
Yeah. And, I obviously know you pretty intimately because we work together. We've been friends for years. And so can you talk a little bit about your SHRM kind of, I don't know if certificate.
Yeah, it's a certification. So HR is interesting too, right? So we talked about the major and if you become a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. If you become a CPA, you have to take that test. In HR, there's no master test that you need to do to join that realm. So really anybody can be in HR. But what SHRM does, and I think this is important, at least this is my opinion, but SHRM is a phenomenal resource and it's a certification that shows what you're doing in the HR world. So SHRM has two different levels of certification. There's the CP and the SCP, certified professional and senior certified professional. And while I was at Family Express, again, like working with new policies and writing the handbook and stuff too, they wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing and could prove that. So they strongly encouraged me to go get the SHRM certification, which I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And they helped cover the cost of that. And I studied, and it was like, I think a 3 or 4 month class that I took, and then you have to take the test to pass. And it's not an easy test, I would say. Yeah. But again, by already SHRM makes you have some HR work before you even sit for the test. So that helped me a lot, and I was thankful I passed on the first time. But what that does is it doesn't mean that you're now qualified to do everything HR, but it shows to someone who doesn't know you have the knowledge and the skill set to make good decisions. And it also, they have different tiers. So the SCP is just a higher level. You can manage more difficult HR decisions. And so did I learn a ton from that? I would say I definitely learned some. Some of that too is also where to find the information and how to research it and who to consult within the company. But it was also just a signifier of I speak this lingo and I know what I'm doing to show others.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's just like in any other certification you have, obviously there's ones that are respected more than others. And I feel like SHRM has been like one of the only ones I've heard for HR that's like very well respected and kind of like universal. Like, oh, this is like, if you have this, you are considered a professional and an expert kind of more in this field. But you're right. I mean, you could take that test, and unless you're using it every day, you don't have that stuff memorized in your brain. And I feel like, yeah, you're right. What it does is it says, hey, like I know exactly where to find these things, and I know how to interpret like the language inside of like certain rules and stuff like that. So
yeah, so there's SHRM and there's PHR, both of which are very popular and respected. And there you can go back and forth with a bunch of HR people, which is better. But we ultimately decided SHRM, and SHRM was the thing that Family Express went with. And but you're right, it's good. And just where do you find this, and how do I get it?
Yeah, so that kind of brings us to when, we were friends, and I remember this transition when you went from working for Target to Family Express and specifically to this new job. And I remember you loved working for Family Express and all the people there, but like specifically being on call for the risk side when there was like ever any incidents or anything was kind of the thing is like, this is not fun.
it's hard. And again, I learned a ton and so thankful I did that role. Even since coming here, that role has helped me as much as any that I've taken. So by being willing to take that risk, it set me up for success and where I am today. And so in that role, I was on call 24/7, which just wears on you. And it's tough to really explain because, a call might take you 5-7 minutes, right? Yeah. But when it's at 1 a.m, and it wakes you up and disrupts your sleep, it's not 7 minutes. It's the time that you're thinking about it. Now I'm awake in bed, and if it was a bigger thing, I'm thinking about it, or I got to get up and deal with it. And it could come at any time of the day. Yeah. And there were other people on the team that took it like when I was on vacation, so I could truly go on vacation and stuff. And I think they've changed it a little bit where someone will take it for a week every month, which is good. Like, I think that was helpful. And I probably should have been a little more vocal about that, but I was just tired. And I think that wore on me, which gave a good little opportunity.
Yeah. It's like having like a 2-month-old that never grows up. Yeah. It's like, doesn't always wake up in the middle of the night, but when it does, it wrecks you, or you think it's going to. Yeah. Right. So yeah, we start talking, and the main company that I own and run has just due to COVID and stuff has really exploded, and we were naturally growing too, but we had gotten to the point where we were in 5 or 6 different states, and we had location managers all over the place, and it got to the point where I couldn't do a lot of that, and we had an HR team. It was becoming too much for them too, and really specifically in that business, it's so customer service oriented, and it's so customer facing that just the ability, just the time requirement to find good people to hire and to train it was getting outside of what I could control. So, we talked and felt the Lord put it on my heart to bring the opportunity up to you. And that's kind of how it works. So, you obviously, because you're sitting here, accept the position with us. And can you talk a little bit about that transition? And one thing specifically I want you to talk about is you have a super unique, you kind of did it in reverse. Most people start at a small company, go to a medium company, go to a large company. You did it reverse. You started at a big company, went to a medium company, then, we have 70 employees or a little bit more than that. So can you talk a little bit about, that transition, what was maybe different that you didn't expect? And then, what are some things that you learned, large, medium, small, that have helped you kind of be an expert in this field?
You're gonna have to ask me some of those again, but yeah, fine. I'll do that. So the transition from Family Express to here, obviously, I now go from 1,000 to 70 employees, and that's another this is a bigger shift again. And I think right away, the first things I hit out of the gate is all right, how do we make sure an HR standpoint, we're locked and loaded. And I think that was really important to me in the beginning, because if you're doing HR well, if you're taking care of your people well, if you're doing what's right by your employee, you're going to be successful. And I think some of that is outlining expectations up front, making sure job descriptions are accurate and up to date, and clearly outlining expectations. How do I know if I'm a good employee?
That specifically, the expectations of the employees, and then upholding those expectations right away. Mm-hmm. And when you're stretched, that's hard to do.
Very, yeah. And it's important that there's not one person leading that, right? So how do you get different people across your organization? Because the reality is we're multi-site too. So I have to make sure that every location manager is hitting in on those things, and that from day one, these are the expectations, that if I'm not meeting it, that's on you. We're going to support you through that. But it's important that, again, it's not just you leading that charge, and they understand how to do it and have those conversations. And that's what I started with too. And I would say, so going from huge, and I would recommend this to people too. I know it depends on the individual, but I learned a ton at Target, learning and earning, like I said before, and I had both. But I truly learned and can have that as a strong foundation for when I went to Family Express. And then I learned how to use things a little differently and make it my own. And what do I need to apply that I gained from Target? And now I can play my part in writing policies and making changes. And what do I learn from that at a company of 1,000? Okay, some things didn't work. Now I'm at a smaller company. It's like, okay, now I can learn from some of the things that I got to implement that did or didn't work. And I'm still making mistakes across the board at times, but it's like, okay, make small mistakes and learn from those. Don't make a catastrophic mistake that's gonna cost you everything. Yeah. And I think really the biggest thing, and I've really learned it across all companies or all jobs that I've had, is taking care of your people and making sure you truly care. And I think that's going back to the beginning a little bit of like what is in my personality of how my career path has gone is I truly care about people. And whether I'm in HR or in logistics or on a management team over the sales floor, like I want to know what's going on and what makes you tick and what's valuable to you, important to you and your kids. And it looks different. And that's what's been challenging about being multi-site, because I can't have as close of a relationship with someone when I'm not there very often as I could when I was in the store. You know, I could chat with you today and not talk to you for another 2 weeks, but you see me all the time. When you're multi-site, that's not as easy. So your ability to build those relationships shrink, but it becomes that much more important too, that all my location managers know how much I care about them and that type of stuff too. So I don't know that I answered all your questions.
Yeah, I think that does. I think that's one thing. If I were to outline one of the few things that you're really good at, is you are so good at making people feel heard, which is very, very important. Doesn't mean we always agree.
Sure.
It's like, hey, like I hear and I see where you're coming from. This is why we have to do things as a company. And then making people feel cared for in that, so important. I want to talk about the investment in HR because so you come on board and it was immediately a little bit of a relief for me, but HR policy and getting the right people on the bus and the right people off the bus takes a lot of time. I mean, so I think, are we at 2 years? I think we're coming up to 2 years.
Yeah, July makes 2 years. Yep.
Yeah, July makes 2 years. And it's just very slowly every month gotten better and better. And now our people who were working for us currently say, hey, these were always our policies, but we just didn't do a good job holding people accountable, or people didn't really understand the expectations. It just takes a long time for that to work through. And when I talk with you first, you know, what I always wanted to do was own a business that was fully transparent. People understood why they were paid the amount they were paid, and they understood how they could make more money in their current position. That is always what I wanted. And that if there are people who were holding people back, that they were not working for us. And the people that it didn't matter if you work for us for 6 months or 3 years, the best people are always promoted. And I feel like we were both on the same page, because kind of going from a massive company to a medium-sized company, that's just harder to do, right? Because there's probably more promotional guidelines and stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure another difference too. As a small company, you can pivot a lot quicker because there are less people impacted, right? So when we're making a change that affects 70 people, that's way different than a change that affects 1,800 stores at Target, and that can make you move really quick, but it still feels slow. Like from HR changes, for a while, it just took me a minute to understand where you were coming from. And like, we talked about some things and I needed to understand before I could truly implement the bigger things and setting expectations. I needed to understand the expectations for them too. And that just takes a little bit of time. Like I could write job descriptions pretty quickly because those are pretty cut and dry, you know, but when it comes to performance, and performance is, it's not very arbitrary, but it takes time to understand. To truly spell that out and be clear just took a little bit of time, and we're still not there. You know, no one's ever there of understanding the perfect hire and how you make sure that happens every time. But as you build more and more things in and work through your management team to make sure that they understand those expectations, that just continues to flow down and make sure everyone really gets what we stand for and understands what makes a good employee and what doesn't, and how do we act quicker? Because that's a big thing too, and we're still figuring that out too, of how do we make sure if we do, you're going to make a bad hire, it happens. How do you identify that quicker and understand, make very clear the expectation that they're not meeting it, and either help them get there or move on and say this isn't a good fit for both of us and cut that tie.
And I think both of us are really led by giving people grace, and we've worked that into our system of like, hey, we understand people make mistakes, people show up late, people may miss things, or they'll have a lapse in, quality. We understand that will happen occasionally, and we've built in like grace periods and, hey, like, you got a month to get yourself back on track. But ultimately, what I think one thing that's a misconception in business is like, you're all on the same ship, and you got to make sure that that ship, all the holes are, if there's any leaks, they're taken care of. And it's like I believe one of the biggest disservices you can do to your company, to your customers, and to your good employees is by keeping employees who don't align with your culture. Mm-hmm. And I think we've done a really good job on that. And it just takes time. It's not overnight. It's like, oh, we're going to make these changes. And we've talked about that. And I think the one thing that we've changed too, since you've come on board, is we're just making more strategic small changes and then wait until those acclimate and then make another small change.
Yeah. Succession planning is huge. And I think if you have a good succession plan, there's no major change. You might have someone leave unexpectedly, and those are always unfortunate. But like, if you have a good succession plan, there's someone that can fill the shoes. Maybe not do it right out of the gate, but the more you do that and the more you get the people on the right seat on the bus, right, that's when you do all go in the right direction. And I think really even with us, we've moved some people around, which has been very healthy and has helped us a lot. And we're still learning some people have different skill sets. And even just between you and I, kind of divvying up some of the workload has been not only beneficial for the company, but also enjoyable for us when we're like, oh, I was doing that and I hated it.
Yeah,
but I did it.
Well, we could talk about that specifically. So when I hired you, our chief operation officer, and what my goal was to, a lot of, just people don't know specifically, we have a business that sells, maintains, and repairs devices for K through 12 schools all across the United States. And we do it like locally, and that's why we need multiple locations, right? So I wanted to get more into projects. I really personally don't like having a lot of meetings every day because I really enjoy the inventive side, new services, new products, innovation, really. And I just because of being in this industry and starting it from the bottom 12 years ago to now, I have just a lot of experience in the procurement side. So originally when I hired you, I'm like, oh, we'll get you trained up and you can take care of the procurement. And then I'll run the sales team and do all of these things. And then really what happened is we morphed it where you're like, I really, really enjoy the people side. I enjoy doing the meetings. And it just takes a long time if you're not a repair tech or if you didn't grow up in that world to understand part numbers of exact models. Because one little number can change all the parts that it needs, communicating with foreign, with Chinese or Asian companies to be able to order things and wiring, and then also knowing historical prices of things. I have like 12 years of just junk in my brain of all of that stuff. So what we did is I'm like, well, hey, if you can manage everybody, take on the sales team and everything, then I can still do the procurement side. It won't take so much of my time, and I'll only do projects. I think both of us have enjoyed that so much more doing that, because I think for you, did it feel pretty daunting trying to figure out all the technical? It was just
intimidating. And I think what was hard too is I was nervous to mess up from the standpoint of like, you're spending a lot of money on stuff. And again, by being just a little off, it could be completely useless for us. And so just being apprehensive in that world too, you have so many more years of doing it than I did. And I felt comfortable leading people and having those conversations and holding people accountable and doing that. And not that I still am learning on parts, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but it allows me more of a time to grow versus, okay, we're cutting the cord and you're going in. it allowed for us, I think, to do, one, what we enjoy, and two, what we're good at. And I think even just you and I, we figured out a little bit more of like, okay, this is how we fit as a unit, as a team better, leading the company in the right direction.
Yeah, and I want to talk specifically, and this is more of your specialty. I think one thing that we've done too is when we hire people, those things that are like, these are very important to us. We've been preaching that right off the bat. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that and like the change you've seen since we've
Yeah, so that's really, it starts, some would say in the interview process. I would also say before the interview process even starts, it's how you represent yourself, whether it's even on social media, but then also in your job posting. What expectations are you outlining there so that if someone clicks apply, they know generally what they're getting themselves into. Yeah. Obviously, you can only give so much information. So then it goes to the interview, explaining what we expect. What's the timeline? There's a learning curve. That's okay. We will teach you. But if you're not here by then, you're not making it, and that's not acceptable, right? Yeah. And getting our managers to get to that point that they can explain it in the interview and was really crucial in that step. And I wouldn't even say we're there yet. Like, we're not all the way there, but I think so much better than where we were. Managers know how to interview better, how to set those expectations. So in day one, they're not surprised when, I don't know, they're tearing down devices and there's their points, results are up on the board for everyone to see. Like, we told you that, we showed you that in the interview, and just making sure goals are aligned when you hire people.
Yeah, and that goes to what we talked about, being transparent. All of our employees know at the repair technician side, they know exactly how they are doing compared to their peers. Mm-hmm. And that also helps us when we meet with them, be like, hey, are you struggling with being distracted? Are you struggling? Do you not have the right tools? It helps us because we want to come at it like, how can we help you get to where you're at or exceeding, your peers. But that's a really good point. And like for me, I always harp on this. Like, I am like, you need to be on time. Basically, if our employees aren't on time, it's immediate counseling,
Yep.
And it's not, it doesn't mean they're being fired or anything if they're late a few times, over a long period of time. But that, military person for 12 years, it's like, that's been something that I feel like is actually a disservice to your employees if you don't uphold that, because they're going to go off to different jobs potentially. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the first thing I can tell if this person's reliable, if he or she is going to show up when they say they're going to.
Yep.
So I think that's been one thing that has been so helpful in our documentation process and really just building out the process side. That takes time, and you have to be methodical about it.
Yeah, and it's a culture shock for your team when you change things too. I mean, they always say change is very hard, and there's a reason they say that, is you can't just change everything all at once. It's gradual. It's explaining the whys. It's getting the culture to come along with you. It's getting their buy-in, and being done right, you can't just switch it overnight. Because I learned a lot by coming here. I learned a lot that why we do things, and our company is very clear how your performance is. It's on the board every day, which is great. I've never had that. It was a little bit more subjective and interpretation, and this is nice because it's, here's how you improve, here's how your points are better, and you go on. So that took time too for me to understand.
Yeah, and I think people, when they're like, oh, I want to make more money, they know exactly how to make more money.
Here
you go. Like, your employment, your labor savings that we have, we pass on to you. Yep. And that's how. And hey, we work with the government. We like, this is something I talk about all the time, and this is like part of our cultural values, is we are always striving to be more efficient because we want to save the taxpayers money. And them understanding that, hey, the reason I can't pay you more is because we have contracts and we have to uphold these contracts and we have to be able to fulfill them properly. But what are some ways we can be more efficient so that you can make more money?
Right.
And I think finding very creative ways to do that and working with people so they understand has been huge. So you being, having that experience on operations documentation, let's say if you were to sit and talk with somebody who is a business owner who might feel like HR or their operations in general, that side of their business has been overwhelming, they've been struggling with retaining employees, could you boil it down to like maybe 4 things? Like, hey, if I only had enough time to focus on 4 things, this is what I would do and why.
Oh, so I would say what we've talked about a lot here is expectations. Are those well known by your employees? Do they know what's expected of them day in and day out? How are they held accountable to those expectations? So is there an actual, and it doesn't, you should have a documentation process, right? Like going down the HR realm of, if I'm going to support a term, what have you done to help them improve before you just term somebody? But what does that look like? And I would say one thing that helped me a lot at Target was something called a chat session. So, you know, any business owner, I'm guessing, knows that they don't know everything, right? Yeah. And I think the older we get, the more we realize I have so much to learn. Talking to your employees, doing chat sessions is what we called them. Sitting down and just asking good questions. Hey, what can we improve? What are you unhappy with? Because if you think everything's running smoothly, there could be a lot of things that are happening that you don't see. So picking their brain, and they're going to tell you everything under the sun that they're unhappy with, right? First thing is going to be the pay, right? Yeah. And there's some truth to that at times, but hey, here's why I can pay you what I pay you. Here's what I can do within my realm as a small business owner, as a big business owner. Like this is what you're truly worth, and this is what I can pay you, and here's how you can be more valuable to me. Yeah. But asking them just the harder questions too of what we can do to improve our company is always a good path to go down. I'll give you 3. How is that?
That's
I don't know
fine.
About the 4th. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, even from my side, seeing what you've done, I think documentation, having very clear job descriptions, you can use templates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Counseling, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a company, you should be doing monthly counseling. Now, if you're an owner and you have different levels of managers or leadership, you would counsel your managers. They would counsel their reports. But having that documentation.
And in here we use counselings very interchangeably, like good or bad, right? It's almost a check-in. So in the HR world, counseling is more of a like, oh, that's negative, normally bad. But counseling is just a meeting. It's a meeting to talk about your performance, how you did last month, and regular. That's a good point too of being consistent. My team knows what time of day they talk with me. Like I have a weekly meeting with each one of my direct reports. So if there's something that's not urgent, just wait till Tuesday when we talk already. That helps me organize my day. It helps them know when they can get a hold of me. If it's urgent, by all means contact me. But if it's not, you know when we're going to talk next, and it can wait.
Yep. Number 2, I would say not rank structure, because I'm going back to military stuff, but basically like org chart, but like I have this problem, this is who you go to. That's really going to help to have the right person answer the right questions. That's something we've done a really, really good job improving. Yep. Because I used to get 50 to 60 either chats or emails in a day that would be short, quick questions like, hey, ask this person because I don't know, because I'm not an expert. That's super important for them to understand who to go to solve a problem. And then I would say maybe the most important thing, and I want to, this is a controversial saying, and I actually want to see if you agree with this or not. I had a person I very, very respect him once he said this: be quick to fire, slow to hire. And that may seem like you're in an emergency, but anytime we have been fast to hire out of reaction or because we like had to fill in, it's always caused a residual hardship on everybody because we maybe brought some people in we weren't sure about or whatever. So do you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. So there is nothing worse than making a bad hire for your company, for your culture, for the atmosphere. Well, arguably, maybe what's just as bad is holding on to a bad employee, because that's also equally bad. But and especially in a leadership role, if you're desperate and you make the hire, now it's affecting multiple people's lives. And, you know, work's only one aspect of your life, right? And I hate the saying of, like, hang your hat at the door because you're an employee right now. It's not true. People have lives and things matter and things bother them, and that's important. And the thing that matters the most too is, what do you do when you go home and you talk about how your day was at work with your kids, with your family? You know, that's the thing that matters in leadership and in HR. And so back to your point about quick to fire, slow to hire. Couldn't agree more. There's I don't love this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's better to have a hole than an a-hole in a position too. And I think that's also true of like, you don't want to have a bad person in any position in your company.
Yeah, I think a perfect example of that is one of our offices. We were pretty heavily staffed and went through a period of time where I think we just had a slow period because there is a seasonality to our business, and some employees didn't want to do some of the other work that they could have done to fill their time. And they were employees, nice people, but just didn't really align culturally with the work that we want to do in quality and then team aspect. And it was funny. I think at that office we had 2 or 3 people leave, and our total output went up, and overall satisfaction of the employees there went up because of people's attitudes. And I think that's just like a perfect, indicator of like, hey, take some time, make sure the person you get in is the right person, and make sure they understand what your culture is and your expectations right away. So that's great insight. But Brad, thank you for being on. I think this is a great insight. I think it's helpful for anybody who's been struggling in the HR world of just small tips and tricks to use. So I appreciate you being on.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man.
Cool.